Good morning. Happy Tuesday. I love 3-day weekends. You know that. I probably am slightly too enthusiastic when I say how much I love 3-day weekends because people might think it means that I don't love my job. I do love my job, but I just really, really love 3-day weekends. So let me just say my work week started off really well this morning. And there's no but after that as far as started off well, but then turned bad. No, it just started off well because I alternate, not necessarily every other day, but just once in a while. Sometimes I eat breakfast at home because I was always taught that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And I have no idea whether that's true, but I like to have a little breakfast. So sometimes I have breakfast at home and sometimes I get fast food. Usually McDonald's, and usually I get some kind of breakfast sandwich, and I get an iced tea. And I did this morning as well. And I was running a little bit late this morning because I was working on something on my turntable for a few minutes, which seems like an odd thing to do around 5 in the morning on a work day, but I was inspired. So I got to McDonald's, and I could tell when I was going around the corner just before the McDonald's that there was nobody else in the drive-through line of McDonald's, and that just made my day. There was nobody in front of me, nobody even at the window picking up their food who had already ordered. It was all mine, and I got through and ordered and had my food. Talk about fast food. I mean, it was probably from the time I got to the little thing where I speak into the speaker and tell the lovely young lady what I'm ordering, to the point where I got my food was probably 90 seconds. It was really, really fast food. Shannon looks like he's really focused on something in there. So here's the other thing that I'm trying to sort out. So that was a very good way to start my day because I was already running a little late. And I got here to the radio station slightly later than I would like to, but still early enough to get everything set up and talk to you on time this morning. Here's my other McDonald's struggle, and I realize this is a very silly thing to start your work week with, but what are you going to do? So the McDonald's app on the smartphone has deals in it, and the deal that I use, in fact, I don't go to McDonald's to get breakfast without it, is breakfast sandwich for $1. So I get my bacon, egg, and cheese McGriddle or an egg McMuffin. On very rare occasion, I get the bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit, which is good too, but I just don't get it as often. And I get an iced tea. When I use the coupon that makes the sandwich $1, the deal that makes the sandwich $1, then the total price with tax is $2.09. And normally, what I do is, if I've got exact change, I give them $2.10, right? Almost exact change. I give them $2.10 if I have a dime or 2 nickels. Right? If I've got a nickel and 4 pennies to give them 9, I do that, but usually I don't have that, so I give them $2.10. And then I usually drive up to the next window without waiting for my penny. So I've paid $2.10 instead of $2.09. I didn't get my penny. Now, this morning, as I was driving away, I could hear the lady calling after me, "Do you want your penny?" And I actually backed up and said, "No, thank you," and then went forward again. But I'm thinking I should have taken the penny, and here's why. One time, not that long ago, I went through the same process, and I ordered the same sandwich and the same drink, and it was the same price, $2.09, and I had, in my little pile of change that I keep in the car, a nickel and 3 pennies rather than a nickel and 4 pennies. So I had 8. And I said to the lady, "Hey, do you have a penny line? You got an extra penny?" Because I hate getting, lots of pennies in change. I didn't have a dime. So I would have had to give a quarter and gotten whatever mess of change that would have gotten me. 16 cents in change. Who needs that? And so I said, "Do you have a penny?" And this is after my leaving penny after penny after penny. Pay $2.10 when it's $2.09, over and over and over again. And she said, "No, I don't have an extra penny." So I couldn't give her $2.08 and get away with my $2.09. That would have been, I guess, Grand Theft McGriddle or something like that. And so I had to get whatever mess of change it was. I might not even have had any coins with me. I might have had to give $3. And you know how this works. Let's say that you go with the McDonald's app deal and you get your bacon, egg, and cheese McGriddle and an iced tea, and it's $2.09. If you don't have coins to manage that 9-cent part and you have to give them paper money for the whole thing, that cost you $3 rather than $2.09. Because you get 91 cents back in change, and the 91 cents back in change, for most practical purposes, is worthless. And so it cost you $3, which is 91 cents more than the $2.09, right? Now, you go through the next time and you've got some change around. Maybe it was some of the change that you got from the $3. Maybe you got change some other way. And you can do that 9-cent part in exact change or close to it. You could give them a dime. Close enough. We'll call that good. And so for those ones, say you hand them two $1 bills and a dime or 9 cents, since change is basically worthless, that cost you $2. Whereas if you didn't have the change, it cost you $3. You with me? But remember, for every time that you have to pay $3 and you get 90 cents in change, and then other times you go through and you've got change and you can give them that and it only costs you $2. Well, it actually cost you $2.10. So you feel like you made 10 cents on that transaction because you feel like it cost $2. You got to do that 10 times in order to make up for the one time that you didn't have the change and had to pay $3. And that, my friends, is the economics lesson of the day. Have the change with you, because if you pay $3 and get 91 cents in change for your $2.09 McDonald's meal, no matter what the math teachers will tell you, that actually costs you $3. And that is my lesson for the day. I hope you found that useful. Now, speaking of, God, that was a weird way to start the show. So we've got a 4-day work week this week. I'm very excited about it because next week I have a week off. And it worked out pretty well. We were going to do this week off, but then one of my kids' camps interfered with the beginning of this week. So we just thought, we'll move it to next week. But now in hindsight, I should have always planned it for next week, because this way I get a 4-day work week for this week, which I love. And then I get next week off, which is not the week of July 4th. So I imagine that places should be less crowded. We're not going away for much of next week. Actually, we'll be around most of the time. But when we do go away, places will be less crowded. So that'll be awesome. And just as I was thinking about all this, I saw a story, I actually like, Kristen and I like, as we're flipping through the channels when we watch TV, which is not all that much. Usually we put the news on in the background and have it as background noise. We like listening to the BBC. They've got a lot of very, very interesting shows and interesting news with a much more worldwide perspective on the news than we get here in America. And there was a headline which just apparently an hour ago got posted to their website as a news story. And here's the headline: 4-day week, an overwhelming success in Iceland. And I was thinking about the fact that we have a 4-day week this week, and I thought I'd share some of this with you because it's an interesting story, and because the other stuff I have to talk to you about is teaching critical race theory in schools, and I don't want to start off our week together by pissing either one of us off. I think it would be more fun to talk about this. So, BBC.com is where I'm getting this from. Trials of a 4-day week in Iceland were an overwhelming success and led to many workers moving to shorter hours, researchers have said. Now, keep in mind, when we talk about the 4-day work week in the United States of America, we rarely, never almost, talk about it actually meaning workers working a shorter number of hours, a lower number of hours in total. What we talk about is 4 10-hour days instead of 5 8-hour days, normally, right? We don't talk about becoming France and their 30 or 35-hour work week or whatever those lazy people do, which is why they don't really have very many big successful companies in France, because they're lazy. So, and that's what you can tell. You can tell. You watch my dog, French Bulldog, one of the laziest dogs in the world. When you're working, he just walks around and gives you the side eye when he thinks you're doing it wrong. He's a born supervisor, and he doesn't do any work. He doesn't even clean up after himself. So freaking French. And picky about his food. Very, very French. Anyway, the trials, meaning the trials of a 4-day week in Iceland, in which workers were paid the same amount for shorter hours, took place between 2015 and 2019. Now, from a worker perspective, who wouldn't want that from the average worker, right? The same money for working fewer hours? That is not the conversation we're having in America. Productivity remained the same or improved in the majority of workplaces, according to researchers. A number of other trials are now being run across the world, including in Spain and by Unilever Company in New Zealand. Unilever is a huge consumer products company that Americans haven't heard of quite as much as they've heard of Procter & Gamble, but that kind of company. They have food as well. In Iceland, the trials run by the Reykjavik City Council and the national government eventually included more than 2,500 workers, about 1% of Iceland's working population. A range of workplaces took part, including preschools, offices, social service providers, and hospitals. So this sounds mostly like government workers, although I haven't verified that. Many of them moved from a 40-hour work week to a 35 or 36-hour work week. Here's the part that I love. This is just, imagine trying to get this part done in America. And I'm not saying we should, just I'm saying, imagine if someone tried. The trials led unions to renegotiate working patterns, with 86% of Iceland's workforce now having either moved to shorter hours for the same pay or having the right to move to shorter hours for the same pay. In the United States, homie, don't play that. Workers reported feeling less stressed and less at risk of burnout. I'm not surprised. And said their health and work-life balance had improved. I'm not surprised by that either. They also reported having more time to spend with their families, do hobbies, and complete household chores. One person said the study shows that the world's largest ever trial of a shorter working week in the public sector, right? So that's government. Yeah, okay. So this is government workers. Was by all measures an overwhelming success. Now, I sometimes get rather sarcastic about government workers, and I know that I've got plenty of government workers who listen to this show. So I want to be kind, because I know that most, I've said this before, in fact, I said it just last week, most government workers do their jobs well and conscientiously. Still, it's easy to be snarky about them. And the main thing, though, the main thing is, it's important to remember that government workers are paid for by taxpayers, often involuntarily, right? They take our taxes from us and to fund some functions of government that we think aren't even legitimate functions of government, or just some things that annoy us. But in any case, they're not funded through a profit motive. They are not profit generating. Most of the time, they are generally part of a regulatory process or law enforcement or national defense or things like that, some of which I have more fondness for than others. But when you start talking about paying government workers the same amount of money to do less work, I'm of two minds about it. One is, the more that we get government workers away from doing whatever it is they do, maybe the better off we'll all be. But that's a little bit more of a libertarian fantasy world and snarkiness. The bottom line is, if they're not there doing their jobs, and especially, and I will be a little less kind here, government workers, especially you talk about, DMV and post office and places like that really get a kind of the rough end of public opinion, but they are not exactly famous for maximizing productivity. I will say, as I'm all over the place in the segment this morning, when I took my kid to get his learner's permit at the DMV recently, they were fairly efficient. And considering what was going on there, I thought they did quite a nice job. So thank you very much to the DMV folks at the office by Arapahoe and Holly there. If you work there, well done. Anyway, I don't think the American mindset and the Protestant work ethic that has dominated this country for so many years, says your Jewish radio host, I just don't think we're going to go down the road of shorter work weeks with the same paychecks, right? I think workers maybe one day will have the choice of 4 10-hour work days or something at least darn close to it, right? Rather than 5 8-hour days. Maybe someday, and I don't think this is the most likely thing, maybe someday workers, and I'm not talking about at one company, I'm talking about a broader societal thing, will have the option to work, 4 8-hour days instead of 5, but for less money, not for the same salary, right? Or even, you go to a 35-hour work week instead of a 40-hour work week. I mean, it doesn't sound like an enormous difference, right? Or 36, you go to 4 9-hour days instead of 5 8-hour days. You're working 36 hours instead of 40. That's 10% fewer hours. Now, I don't know whether it's 10% less getting stuff done. I don't know whether it's 10% less productivity. But it's 10% fewer hours. You should be paid 10% less, probably, unless you can prove that somehow you can get just as much done, in which case you should probably be getting more done now. Here's a researcher in Iceland named Gudmundur Haraldsson. What a perfect name. Gudmundur Haraldsson. Gudmundur Haraldsson. If that dude isn't the descendant of a Viking, I don't know who is. That's an awesome name. He said the Icelandic shorter working week journey tells us that not only is it possible to work less in modern times, but that progressive change is possible too. Spain is piloting a 4-day working week for companies in part due to the challenges of coronavirus, and consumer goods giant Unilever in New Zealand is giving staff a chance to cut their hours by 20% without hurting their pay in a trial. So here's the thing. Last thing I'll say about this. I think there will be a lot more leverage by private sector employers to say to their workers, we'll give you a chance to do this thing if you can show us that you are just as productive. And if you can't show us that you're just as productive, and if we don't have just as much work getting done as before, then we're going to go back to the old way. I think it's very difficult with the government because government unions are very strong and the government doesn't push back much against the unions because really they're all government. And so I think the taxpayer is more likely to get screwed. We'll be right back.
This is Denver's Talk Station with Ross Kaminsky now. Tom Martino at 10, 630 KHOW, Denver.